everyone. Today we've got a special guest with us. Welcome, Ryan.
Yes, thanks for having me on, Damon. My name is Ryan Hassan. I run a business called the Melbourne Centre of Healing. So we're an all-natural outpatient clinic when it comes to addiction and mental illness. So we deal with all types of addictions, drug and behavioural, and all types of mental illness. So depression, anxiety, bipolar, the whole shooting match. So yeah, we're located out in Cheltenham, which is out near Melbourne. And as I said, all natural outpatient therapy here.
Yeah. What do you mean by natural?
No medications, that kind of thing. It's all just sort of us delving into people's past, their individual story, their traumas, and all that kind of thing. So none of those band-aids that medication can be sometimes.
Yeah. What was it that got you interested in getting into the field of addiction?
I used to be a tradesman, actually. So I used to be an air conditioning mechanic for 11 years. But in 2014, I fell really deeply into addiction. I was addicted to ice and GHB, using them every day, dealing to support my habit, run-ins with the law, like overdoses, the whole shooting match, really deep in the scene. So I was able to come out the other side of that and really address the underlying emotional reasons why I'd become an addict in the first place. And after I was able to do that, it sort of got me fired up. It made me see a different mission for myself in this life, where I can sort of help people try and do the same thing. And so that's what we do here at the centre. It's to help people have that experience that I did, so they can get past their own addictions and mental demons.
If you don't mind me asking, what was it in particular that you found most beneficial about your journey?
As in, when I was getting clean, like what were some of the main things that I was able to find out about myself?
Yeah, or that helped you the most?
When I initially started unpacking a lot of my baggage, there was two main things that were the big catalyst for change. I went through, many weeks of getting this therapy, but the thing that got me to stop using drugs was mainly two things. Number one, I had realized I had a belief that I couldn't be vulnerable in front of everyone. This is a belief that a lot of people have, especially guys in this country, to be honest. Yeah. So I had this belief that I couldn't let anybody in my life see me struggle. So I went through my entire life not letting anyone, my close friends, my family, my wife at the time, let me see exactly how much I was struggling on the inside. So I was the guy who I'd happily talk to everyone else, my mates, whoever it was. I'm like, let me give you some advice, How are you doing? And I'm like, I'll deal with my stuff later. Then it'd come to later and I'm like, cool, I don't like all this. And then I would distract myself with drugs, alcohol, that kind of thing. So I'd spent my life wearing a mask, essentially. I was never my authentic self, because I was always putting on this facade that everything was fine, when internally it wasn't. Once I was able to sort of unpack that, it was like I hadn't really cried in about over 10 years previous to finding this out. And you can imagine it was like 10 years of suppressed tears all flooding out of my system. So it was a gigantic release, understanding that, hey, I can let people see a vulnerable side of me and I'm not going to get judged for it. That was the first step. The second big one was I found out I had a belief that I didn't love myself. And I, in fact, never loved myself my entire life. So I didn't accept who I was. So I was always trying to change the way I acted or the way I was being to try and get that acceptance and love from people, because I didn't have it inside. So I was able to unpack that and where that originated from my life. And then something very special happened in that moment. Once I was able to process and release that, for the first time in my life, I became present with myself. And there was no wanting to escape, because my entire life was made up of what's next, never being in the moment, always trying to get to the next thing. So when I was able to actually accept and love myself for who I was, that's when I knew I didn't need to use drugs anymore. Wow. So that were the two big things for me.
Okay, that's really powerful. I went on a meditation retreat last year for 10 days. And similar to what you were saying, I'm somebody who does probably stay a bit too busy for what is good for me. And by going for 10 days without any reading, writing, technology, drugs, alcohol, caffeine, any of those things, what I found is there was a lot from the past that actually came up that I thought I'd already processed. And so, I was just wondering, in your mind, is most addiction related to past trauma or to not wanting to come into contact with our emotions fully?
Yeah, I believe all of it is. So I wouldn't say, just some of it or half of it is. It's my strong belief that all of it is rooted in past emotional trauma and or a disconnection from ourselves. So when we don't feel connected with ourselves, we're always going to try and escape, and try and find something to distract ourselves with. And addiction takes many, many forms. I mean, people think of it's drugs, but it's also alcohol, it's gambling, it's shopping, it's sex, it's porn, it's video games, it's work. Like some people will get, you know, the workaholic gets rewarded by society, where the heroin addict on the street gets judged by society. But I see them both come in here at the center, and they are so goddamn similar. It's amazing. So it's like we'll always find the coping mechanism that will help us escape from that pain. Yeah, and we all have pain to a varying degree. So I believe that's where it's all rooted, to be honest. So, but I'm interested about, was that the Vipassana retreat that you went on?
Yeah, it was a lot harder than I expected it to be.
Yeah, I expect it to be hard. That's why I'm scared of it.
Yeah. Time never went so slowly. It was like back to when I was a child, where a 2-week holiday felt like it went on forever. I hadn't experienced that for so long, and I think it is because I keep myself so busy.
I know a few people, a few friends who've done the retreat. I'll be interested to know if you had a similar experience. But they said, the few that I know, it's either been between days 3 and 5. They said, for a while there, I thought I was going mentally insane. And I'm like, what happened after that? But once they got past that part, everything just quietened down, and they were able to actually be more peaceful than they'd ever been.
Yeah, I had moments. So I think there were times, especially when it was raining and all I was doing, I was either in bed or I was up in the meditation hall, where it was really tough. But then there were other times where the sun was out and we could walk around a little bit, and I could just appreciate the view that we had in nature. That, yeah, it felt more peaceful than I'd had in a long time.
Yeah, wow.
Do you see technology as being something that could help people with trauma or addiction, or is it something that could be more harmful?
I think there's both sides to it. I think there's some technologies that are going to greatly benefit us, and some, maybe the majority, are going to actually hinder us. I mean, take social media, for example. Social media is awesome, and like everyone's on it, everyone loves it. But social media is designed, the people who make, you know, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that kind of jazz, YouTube, it's made for a specific reason. It plays on the same kind of neurochemistry that addiction does. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's why it's set up. That's why we scroll with our thumbs. That's why we get notifications. It's so we release a little bit of dopamine in our brain, and we can check that dopamine off each time. That's why we put the phone down and go, I'm going to leave that for a bit. And you pick it up again 5 minutes later. So it's not as intense as like a drug or something like that, but it's definitely working on the same neurochemistry. So yeah, I heard actually, I think Joe Rogan talks about it. He said, this new drug came into society that came from somewhere else, and they're like, this drug's going to make people disconnect from their friends, not concentrate when they're talking to their family. It's going to have people walking around with their head down all the time. Then people would say this is the worst drug ever invented, but that's what our phones are becoming to an extent.
Yeah, definitely. It's amazing. I even saw someone on their skateboard the other day on their phone.
Yeah, right. He'd want to be a skilled skateboarder. I'd be stacking all the time.
Yeah, me too. With your center, I've heard that you do have infrared saunas, and you've got the pods, are they? Or the
flotation tank therapy, yeah. It's 2 minutes down the road. We don't have them in the center, but we outsource. But yeah, part of our programs include those things. So yeah, infrared sauna, from a physical point of view, we're just trying to detox the body and get those toxins out. Like, we take in toxins to our body through the water we drink, the air we breathe, the food that we eat, let alone all the illicit substances that we've put in our body as well. So the body's set up well. It detoxes quite well. But the last, say, 30 or 40 years, we're being bombarded with these toxins and heavy metals like never before. So I think it's important to have a protocol where we can eliminate these toxins faster than we're taking them in. And you can find that, you know, some heavy metals, if we get toxic in them, can really wreak havoc with our mental health. I take mercury for an example. If we get toxic in mercury, we can start to lose our short-term memory and become severely depressed. So it's just getting that stuff out. The infrared saunas are good. Like, people are like, oh, what's the difference between them and a normal sauna? Well, a normal sauna, you've got a bunch of Greek dudes that are nude, but you've also got some stones that you're pouring the water over. So using steam to heat up the room can get it really hot and a bit hard to breathe as well. The infrared sauna is using infrared lighting. So it feels a lot gentler, so it's not as hot, but it's actually more efficient. It gets deeper into the tissue to draw out the toxins, which is really cool. So yeah, we use the saunas and also the flotation tanks. So float tanks are basically sensory deprivation tanks. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we've always got this information coming into our senses. You know, I'm looking at you on the screen now. I can hear the cars outside. I can feel my bum on the chair. There's always input coming in. In the tank, we get none of that. It's a big spaceship looking thing. There's water up to about calf height or knee height. In that water is half a ton of Epsom salts. So you're really buoyant. It's like you're in the Dead Sea, yeah? The water's the same temperature as your skin. So after a while, you lose sensation of where your skin ends and the water starts. You shut the lid of the pot, and when the light goes off, it's all dark, so no input through the eyes. There's some soft music that's playing, and after 10 minutes, that shuts off, so nothing in through the ears. So all of a sudden, there's no information coming in through the senses. The tank's good for a few things. The number one thing it's good for is anxiety. So what happens, we have, as you would know, the amygdala, the part of our brain which is like the guard dog. It's in charge of anxiety, fight or flight, and stress. When we're in the tank, it might take 5 minutes, it might take half an hour, but the amygdala senses there's no threat in this environment and starts to calm down, which is really helpful, because when we have high anxiety, that amygdala is just going off. It's seeing threats everywhere. So it gives people some relief from that and trains the amygdala to start shutting down. So yeah, we've found great benefits with the tank. Like some people, the main objection we kind of get first, people like, I'm going to be claustrophobic, I'm going to be shutting that tank. But it's actually fine. You know, when you're in there, it actually feels quite spacious because it's dark anyway, and you can pop the lid open if ever you get claustrophobic, you're not locked in there.
Yeah, I gave it a go last year for one day, and I did find that I slept a lot better that night. And I think that was because the arousal really dropped down when I gave it a go.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, the experience in the tank is always different. Like I've done, I don't know, 50 or 100 floats now. It's always been different in the tank. You know, sometimes I can't quite shut the monkey mind off. So I'm like, just think about some issues that I might have, and you can think about them without any distractions. Sometimes I'll jump in there and after 5 minutes, I'm off in a different dimension and the hour goes like that. Mm-hmm. But the feeling afterwards is always the same. It's normally much better sleep that night. It's feeling a bit more calmer and thinking a bit more clearly for the next 3 or 4 days. So yeah, highly recommend.
Yeah. So with trauma, what I'm learning more and more is, after I read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, is just how important it is to do some type of body work. And that can be through exercise, through massage, through the infrared sauna or the float tank. Psychological therapy can help a bit, but some extra body work is often quite helpful. Is that what you find as well?
Absolutely, yeah. We have Heidi here, who's a kinesiologist. So she's specifically working with that body, because our body is like a representation of that subconscious mind. The body doesn't lie. Our conscious mind might be able to make up some stories and everything, with the body, like you said, it keeps score. So she's doing that kind of body work, going through a muscle testing, find out what's happening emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and going from that point. So I believe, yeah, it's a holistic approach. Yeah, like I always say, you've got these 4 bodies as a human: the emotional, the mental, the spiritual, the physical. And I think the more, when it comes to even physical illness or anything, the more you can attack from those 4 sides, the much better chance you have of success.
All right. Thank you for today. If there's one last thing that you'd want people to know about addiction, what would that be?
A lot of people want to tell an addict what's wrong with their addiction. They know what's wrong with their addiction. Addiction is a condition of guilt and shame. So never ask why the addiction, ask why the pain.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Damon.
All the best.